Welcome to all our wonderful listeners. You're listening to W4WN and you're on Radio Toni with Toni Lontis live from Australia. I know there are many of you listening tonight and across Australia, but I'd love to know where you're listening from. So if you've got a moment and you feel like it, pop your country into our chat on W4WN.com and let us know where you're from. A big hello to Rebel listening in the background today. I've had the busiest week in a long time. My daughter jetted off to Bali on her first ever solo holiday and left her 3-year-old with us for nanny and poppy time. We've also been very busy with looking after a 3-year-old. It's been, 25 years since I looked after a 3-year-old full-time, and it was really busy. What a blessing being a grandparent is, and for those of you out there, a big shout out to those grandparents who part-time grandparent, and a very big shout out to all those grandparents who look after their grandchildren full time. Also this week saw the graduation of my son from his physiotherapy course after 6 years of study. And he graduated on Friday night, and with a graduation dinner, and followed by a whole day graduation ceremony the next day. Amongst all of this, he had to pack and move his stuff into storage at our place, sell cars and motorbikes, and he's moved to a different country. He starts work in New Zealand on Monday, so we will miss him desperately. I've also had one of those weeks where I felt a little melancholy, and I thought I'd take the time to share my thoughts with all of you, my wonderful listeners. So last week over the weekend and into Monday, I was feeling really underwhelmed with the life path I'd had since I published my first book in January. I heard the misguided self-talk of a reformed perfectionist struggling with the feelings of I'm not good enough and my world is not perfect enough, and who did I think I was to embark on a career speaking professionally, writing books of meaning and taking on a weekly radio show with no experience whatsoever? Did I have delusions of grandeur and thinking that I might be able to help heal the world? I'm not really generating much income and from book sales, and I have no paid speaking engagements as yet, and I'm not particularly generating huge buzz around my radio show or even getting paid for advertising, and I was feeling like a bit of a failure. You see, I've written a powerfully, deeply introspective book on my life, and it's not a fluffy read. It's a guts and determination, strength and fragility, and it's a vulnerable look at what transpired in my life. There's no blame, no regret, just an explanation of what happened, how it changed me, and how I sought to gain the knowledge and understanding to heal myself, and also how wonderful my life is now. It's the musings and the learnings from the pain and trauma suffered firsthand. It's testimony to the strength of one person's resilience, hence the title Resilience. I don't say these things lightly, as self-confidence, self-love and the self-empathy I now feel were really hard-fought traits for me that I struggled to understand and obtain. I know these words are true in my life, but I still struggle. I believe my story will save, help, inspire and heal millions. I know it has already had an impact on those that have read it, and I know because the hundreds of heartfelt messages from people that have sent me. What I don't have is a name or a known personality like Michelle Obama or Tara Westover or Brene Brown or any of the other well-known personalities who've written memoirs or books whose stories are no less inspiring and meaningful. There are teams of people assisting them with marketing, advertising, book signings and booking of speaking engagements. Team coordination of effort equals sales and an income to dream of. This then enables them to help more and more people healing the world as they go. My team consists of me, with a little bit of help from an admin assistant. I'm a one-stop marketing, book selling, hustling, blogging, author, radio host who knows that I know that I need to keep pushing ahead. Why do I know? Because my story is not about me. It's about the change that happens to you when you read my memoir, the questions it raises, the hope it offers, and the way you think about certain issues in your world and the things that it explains. It's the unmistakable belief that I was called to do this, and it's selfish for me to keep from the world a message that is uniquely mine, that can only be told by me and can only be delivered in my unique way. So I've been listening to Brené Brown's audiobook Rising Strongly, and I know I have an issue with asking for help. Don't have a problem giving it, but I have a problem asking and receiving it. I've always struggled to ask for help. I'm fiercely independent and never ask for help from anyone. For me, asking for help always makes me feel vulnerable, less of a person. I am, however, generous to a fault. I'm completely and consistently helpful to others all of the time, and I collaborate endlessly with others, but ask nothing in return. And then it hit me. I realised that there are all of you out there, and there's a reason I'm connected with you, that you are part of my team, and that your connectedness to me is part of a much bigger desire to get my message out there and help heal the world. So today I'm asking, not in a spirit of neediness, but in a spirit of accepting help in whatever form that takes. So my beloved listeners, spread the word about Radio Toni. For those of you that have read the book, tell others about it. And if you need a speaker for an event, just book me. You'll be glad you did. Besides, it's time I started asking for help. And already this morning, before I pop into world news or what's making news around the world today, I've got some lovely feedback from my listeners already. So a lot of you are listening from the United States, and I just feel so blessed that you're listening to me. How old was your child going on their first vacation alone? Well, she's actually 30, guys. My oldest girl is 30, and that's the first time she's gone on an overseas vacation by herself to Bali, to a healing retreat. How can you feel like a failure when you have so much going on? I think it's because I've got so much going on that I struggle with perfectionism, and if I talk to you on the radio and I mess my words up, I feel like I've failed, which I know is silly because I know that you listen and I know that you like me to be real. It's more about what goes on in my heads. So some more listeners telling us that they are listening from the US, and I love that I've got so many people listening from the US. Why am I feeling this way? I guess a combination of lots and lots on my plate, lots of things to do, a son who's moving to another country, a daughter who's struggling with a few things, and lots of stuff going on in my world. I've gone from having a full-time income and a consulting company that was doing rather well to promoting me, my speaking, and doing my radio, which all of the things that I love, and all of which are supported by my husband, but just feeling that I should still be doing more. So I'm getting through those feelings now and feeling quite chuffed that I'm on the radio again with all of you guys. It actually brightens my life and makes me feel quite privileged that I get to talk to you live on radio. So
hello.
Hi, Marianna. Our guest for this morning has just joined, and I will introduce her shortly after I've run through some quick world news today. So I just wanted, the first story that's making me feel wonderful this week is about a father and son duo from Nimbin, which is actually not too far from where we are and where I'm broadcasting from on the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia. So back in 2015, this father-son duo decided to change the beekeeping game by redesigning the traditional beehive. And now honeybees across the world are benefiting from their profits. Stuart and Cedar Anderson are the co-creators of the Flow Hive, a brilliantly designed beehive that saves beekeepers hours of work simply by channeling all of its honey into a trap that can be turned on and off at will. The Flow Hive allows honey to flow out of the hive straight into a jar without crushing or disturbing or disrupting the bees inside. Yes, when I talk about beehive, I'm not talking about a hairdo. I'm talking about an actual beehive with bees in it. So for small backyards, rooftops or balcony, this particular hive is a wonderful invention from its Australian inventors. Cedar, the son of the duo, is a third-generation beekeeper from the rural community of Nimbin in Australia, and he was inspired to try and design a simpler beehive after his brother was stung multiple times during one of their honey extraction missions. For those of you that don't know, to get the honey out of traditional hives, you have to crack open the hive, take the frames of honey out, spin the honey out of the hives and put it all back together. So these young inventors invented a hive where you just turn a big key and the honey drips from the hive. So they've been working on this idea for 10 years, an idea that gets the honey out of the hive, extracts it without stressing the bees. So what they did was design and invent this Flow Hive prototype, and then they raised money to manufacture it on a platform called Indigo, and their campaign became one of the most successful crowdfunding platforms in history. They raised $12 million in 8 weeks and sent their Flow Hives all over the world. So 4 years later, they've had a dramatic impact on the honeybee populations across the world, because essentially they've made it easy for the everyday person to get honey in their backyard without being stung. Yep, I've got one, and you still get stung, but you don't stress the bees, and the honey just drops out and into a jar. It's just a wonderful invention, and I'm so proud that it was made by 2 Australians. I'm equally proud that 100% of their Flow Pollinator House invention, a separate invention, goes to grassroots pollinator projects across Australia. So in further news this week, New Zealand has launched their multi-million-dollar 6-month buyback scheme to compensate owners for handing back their newly banned semi-automatic weapons in the wake of the deadly attacks in Christchurch. That begins shortly, and they are expected to that there's an estimated 14,300 military-style semi-automatics across the country which need to be handed back before the amnesty finishes. Last week we spoke briefly about Hong Kong and their protests against the extradition bill, and I just thought I'd let you know that there's nothing further happened about the extradition bill, and it still remains in limbo with more protests expected across Hong Kong. Now, before we go to the break, I just want to tell you briefly about our wonderful guest today. Marianna Quint is our guest today, who we will be talking to after our break. Despite being exposed to poverty, racism, sexual and physical abuse as a child, Marianna made choices that led her on a path to a loving, fulfilling life. Now she's sharing her experiences to inspire others and help them create a new destiny. Marianna was born in Oakland, a child in the US, a child of mixed heritage when it was not acceptable. She grew up in the rough inner city of Los Angeles, the notoriously violent Watts district. The product of a multiracial union, she was first left with relatives, then abandoned, then given over to foster care. Marianna's life has been struggle at the best, tragedy at the worst, suffering from emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. Marianna was born with heart and energy that she gained from all her ancestors and believed it is her job to unite them all with love. Her story has become one of poverty, crime and loss, but is now one of victory, joy and abundance. So I'll pop you all over and we'll have a quick break. And when we come back, we will be talking to the delightful Marianna. Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Toni Lontis on Radio Toni, and today we're going to be talking to a wonderful guest, Marianna Quint, who, despite being exposed to poverty, racism, sexual and physical abuse as a child, has made choices that led her to a path of loving and fulfilling life. She's now sharing her experiences to inspire others to create their own destiny. Life may give you a rough beginning, but by making good choices, we can create any life we choose. We must never give up, always focusing on the better choice. Good morning, Marianna.
Good morning, Toni.
How are you this morning?
I am so happy to be here with you and all the listeners.
I'm really happy to have you here, and I love actually hearing your American voice on my Australian radio show. That's really wonderful. So I thought today we'd start by telling our listeners about growing up with your mixed heritage. So what were the nationalities of your parents?
Okay. I have a little bit of an exciting story to tell you.
Oh, good.
All my life, I grew up thinking that I was half French.
Yes.
My father is Choctaw, Chippewa, and French and black, and my mother's Dutch, Irish, Scotch, and English.
Wow.
Well, recently, just this year on Ancestry, I found out that was not my father.
Oh my goodness.
And I was someone else. And he's black as well, and Cherokee.
Yes.
And that was so exciting. Also Ethiopian and some other lots of African tribes. So I was like, oh my God. So here I'm Dutch, Irish, Scotch, and English. And then finding a new tribe of ancestors
from the African side.
Oh yeah, well I always knew my African side. I've never not known I was have black inside of me. Yes. However, the tribe was a different thing, and the father was a different thing. Yeah, so it's pretty exciting discovering my new relatives. Mind you, this is only like a couple of months in the knowing, and they're all wonderful. It's wonderful to meet them. And my other relatives that I've known forever, I love them so. I just feel like I've experienced a greater family, and the understanding of family. It's not always blood. It's also about who embraces you. Like my father that was on my birth certificate, he embraced me enough to give me his name and his family. And so that is beautiful.
Yeah. So let's start at the beginning and tell me some of the things you experienced as a child, if you're comfortable talking about those things, Marianna, just so our listeners get an essence of what it was like in your childhood.
Well, it was not nice. My foster mother was not a woman of love, and she was a woman who abused us children and worked us. I felt like we were her slaves. Yeah. And also, before I got into her home, I was also sexually abused by my father, who I thought was my father then. And so I had to deal with that in secret with her. And then when her son that she had started sexually abusing me, I kept it a secret. Oh, it was something like this is my story, but it's also my victory, overcoming it. I'm no longer sad about it. It's just my story. my brother, my foster brother, started abusing me at four years old. So there was a lot of sexual abuse until I was like 14. And
it's very, one of our listeners said, why did you not speak up? Well, it's incredibly difficult for a 4-year-old to understand what's happening to them, that it's wrong. And I guess you're best to explain to our listeners that you probably didn't realise all of that was bad until you were 14, or what happened?
What happened was, first, in the beginning, I was not wanted in the house.
Yes.
So when I did speak up any truth, like when I was abused, like being beaten by the siblings of the house, the other children she had, I was beat for that. And so it was not easy to say about the sexual abuse from her son when my father was already, before I ever got in the house. So I did not know anything.
Your foster mum knew about your father's abuse of you?
She didn't know. Not only that, but when she did find out by what Jerry had done, she abused me. She called me names, beat me, and so accused me of calling me all sorts of ugly names, and watched me like a hawk from then on. So, it was not an easy... Yes.
It often happens that in abuse situations, the child that's being abused finally gets up the courage to talk to someone about it, and they're not believed, or they're told that they're lying, or they're not supported in any way. And I guess that's what you experienced firsthand, Marianna.
No support at all.
Yeah. One of our listeners wants to know, when does it come to knowledge that the behaviour is naughty?
Oh, that was good. Well, when I knew it was not right, because we were always told to keep it secret. So if you have to keep a secret, so I carried the shame and secret with me.
Yes.
And so, and then when my foster mother was accusing me of being the lowest names you can say, I wanted to prove to her and myself that I was not that.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason what I call my choices. I started making choices to not allow myself to be abused, and also to choose to be the person that I thought was a good person.
Yes. Did it take you into your teenage years to start making those choices, or were you younger?
Well, the choices came when I was in my teenage years, because there was always this stuff going around. Yes. And then the shame made me feel like I never had a choice to be, quote, a good girl, because it was taken away from me, It
was taken from you.
Yes. And so I chose to do the best I could with my history, and carried myself in a way of love. I did not dwell on the ugliness that had happened in my past, because once she found out, it was not part of my story. It washed it out.
Yeah.
To not carry it.
Yeah. Lots of questions coming in. So what kind of a mother would do that to a child? Well, she wasn't your real mum. She was your foster mum. That's correct, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So actually, I call her my foster mom. Yes. But she actually just took us in because and I know she must have gotten money, because money was very important to her. Yes. But she used us as her workload, and he was paying rent. He was renting from her for a while. Yes. And that's how we got into her life.
Oh, okay. Next question. When is a secret not a secret and should be told?
Well, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I had a very good friend in school, and I shared with her. And so yes. I for years I cried about it, and that was my badge. I called it my someone told me, you carry your wound like a badge of courage. And I realized that I was talking about it as a victim, that I was actually keeping myself in the victim mode and using it as a reason for people to pay attention to me.
Yes.
So
yes.
I took that and use it now as something to teach others. You don't wear the wound. No. You become the victor. You don't be the victim. You are the victor. You choose love. Because some things you can't help that happens to you.
Yes. You can only change the way that you react and go forward. You can't always change the bad things that happen in your life, but you can change your attitude, the way you carry yourself, and the choices you make about going forward in your life. And that's not easy. It's really not an easy thing to do. It's incredibly courageous and takes a lot of strength to become a victor from being a victim. One of our listeners wants to know, how can a person know what is a good choice when they have so many bad things being done to them?
Well, I personally discovered God as a child.
Yes.
Thank God for God. And we weren't religious. We were, we never went to church. But in my spiritual journey, that's when I discovered a personal relationship. And so learning to feel love from the divine, when no one else around you was giving you that. And what ends up happening, I started seeing the good and choosing the good. And then you start to be around that. I made choices not to be with the children or the people or the adults who were drinking and so doing destructive things in their life, because there was a lot of people in the family that were alcoholics, and there were drugs. We lived in a neighborhood, there was drugs everywhere, and they were fighting and all sorts of things. But I chose the safer, more peaceful journey, and you feel the difference between that. And I would follow my feelings, and as you follow your feelings of love for yourself, safety, you end up being surrounded, and opportunities move you to the better choices.
Yes. That's a powerful thing to discover as a child, Marianna. That's quite an amazing thing that you discovered as a child. Our listeners want to know, how did you come to be with this woman? And you had to figure all this out on your own. So the woman that you talk about where the abuse happened was not really a foster mum, but you viewed her as a foster mum, isn't that right?
That's what I call her now, because I don't know, but how I got to be with her was that who I thought was my father was renting a room from her. She heard of the story of how he had me and my brother and sister who weren't with us, that we were living in separate homes, that she wanted to bring us to her. So she asked him to give us to him. So that's how we got to be to her too. That's how we got to be family.
To be with her.
Yes.
So did you lose contact with your other siblings, your brother and sister, during that time? Were they still in close vicinity to you, or you had no contact with them?
Okay. My brother and sister, two of us, we grew up together. And when I got to be 18, that's another magical story. When I got to be 18, I had to look for my mom.
Yes.
And I found my mom and my dad, Sydney.
Yes.
It's a miracle. At that time, they didn't have Ancestry or anywhere, but I did find them, and he directed to my mom, and I found my brother and sister. She had 2 more children.
So they were all in Australia?
Oh, no. I was in the United States at that time.
You were in the United States, and they were also in the United States?
Yes. I'm only here for 10 years.
Okay. Yeah. So you found all of your family when you were 18, yeah?
Yes.
But you didn't have much communication with them before you were 18?
Well, I had 2, my brother and sister that grew up with me.
Yeah.
And then the other 2 who grew up with my mom. I found them with her.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So in terms of your foster mother, do you still talk to her, or did you sort of cease communication with her once you were old enough to leave home?
When I left, I left. But
Yes.
however, I did from time to time check in with her.
Okay.
And she has passed on.
Okay. Fair enough. So you mentioned before that you had a lovely story about turning 18 and reuniting with your mum. Can you tell our listeners about that?
Okay. When I was 18, I wanted to get married, and I was a Baha'i. And Baha'is need parent consent to get married.
Aha.
So I hadn't seen my mother since I was like 4 years old.
Yep.
So I remembered her name, because that's another magical part, because I was in the attendance office and saw her name on my attendance card. I didn't even know my mom's name.
Oh, wow.
So I saw her name and I remembered it. I was maybe about 10 years old.
Yeah.
So here I am looking for her. And so I called a couple of government, like voting registration, and I called the FBI on the phone and said, I need to find my mom and dad, because and one lady, she understood me and she helped me, gave me my father's address.
Oh, wow.
And so I went over to him, and he told me that he had been in touch with his cousins had been in touch with my mom.
Right.
And they took me to her. I went up on a weekend and found her just like that.
Wow. And what was her reaction when you turned up?
Oh, it's so beautiful.
Oh, good.
When I walked in with my cousin,
yes,
she kept me in the living room, and she says, "You wait here." And she went and says, "Mary, I want you to meet my friend." And so I went into the room, into the kitchen where she was, and she looked at me and she just started crying. And she says, "Marianne." Oh God, what a moment. Marianne, and both these black eyes, mascara everywhere. That's what happened. So we had and I met my sister and my brother, who I knew existed, but I didn't know about my sister. And we started developing a close relationship, considering we hadn't seen each other ever. It was beautiful.
Did she ever try and look for you in that intervening time?
I asked her that once, and no, she did not. She told me that she had a family and she didn't want me to get in the way. And at that moment when I heard that, I said, "Mom, you're my mom. You gave me birth, but now let's be friends."
Yeah. And so you were able to develop a lovely relationship with your mother and step siblings?
Yes, a good relationship with everyone. It's amazing, and that's also
amazing.
I could have been angry and judgmental, but I chose to understand and forgive, and I understood my mom, considering at the time when I was born, interracial marriage was just not happening, and so she had. And to me, she's a strong woman, because to me, she made a choice to give birth to all us children.
Yes.
And what happened in the end is life, and a woman who's trying to survive. We can't judge anyone, because all of us, one of these days, are 18-year-olds make mistakes, 20-year-olds make mistakes.
Yes.
We make mistakes all our life. Why would we bother to judge someone for that?
I agree completely. You should never judge anyone. You should always assume that they're doing the best job they know how to do with the tools that they have at the time.
Exactly.
And judgment serves no one, and it helps no one.
Actually, it hurts the one who's judging. Imagine if I was angry at my mom all these years, what sickness and disease and things I would have created for myself. I didn't have to go and be around her all the time, but to know that this is the woman who gave me birth. This is the woman that God in the infinite universe chose for me to come through. Yes. So how could I hate her? And she's doing the best she can. And we must remember what everybody, that's what I've learned anyway. That's what helps me.
I have learned that too. To assume that people are doing the best job that they can and come from a perspective of higher understanding and just go, they've done the best job they can at the time and that's all they could do, and no one has any right to judge or expect anything more from them. So you found your mother at 18, and did you go on to get married after that once you'd found your mother?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Well, I feel my life has been one magical journey.
Yes.
And my husband was from Thailand. Okay. And we had a beautiful daughter, my little girl, Pamela. Yes. And again, I feel like I've united through my blood. That's why I say I'm the United Nations in one body. My children finished the picture. Yes, definitely. So my daughter is everything I am, plus Thai and Chinese. So I'm very happy about my international family by blood and my international family of extended. I have family from all over the world, you know.
So you've only got the one daughter?
No, and I've got two boys. Well, I married again. And I had two boys, and they're Greek. Their daddy's Greek. So I have an international family.
All continents of the world, Marianna. That's very interesting. Okay, so just before we go on to the boys, let's go back to your daughter. So can you tell our listeners what happened in your first marriage and a bit about your daughter, if you're okay talking about that?
I don't mind. I have a most beautiful, wonderful daughter.
Yes.
And very blessed to have given birth to her.
Yes.
And what happened in the marriage was basically I was too young to understand how to make a marriage work, because he was a very good man.
Yes.
And so all those genes run through my daughter, and she's a very good girl. So so we had 5 good years, and I would call myself a little spoiled brat, because I would also say a little bit of fundamental, which has taught me a lot to not be fundamental about anything, because I was upset with him because he gambled, and I just be out of this relationship. I just can't deal with that. Yes. So my life has been a good teacher, because now in retrospect, I saw that I released a very good man. But if Pamela wouldn't have a beautiful sister, Panida, who is also, because we've divorced, he married again, and then we have Panida. It's life is beautiful. You just allow it to unfold and learn your lessons and see things as well as the bad things, because even those are good in the end if you look at them properly.
Yeah. One of our listeners wants to know, did you know what to look for, and did you protect your own children from sexual abuse?
You bet.
Yeah, because it teaches you that, doesn't it?
It does. You end up having a second, if you're already intuitive, you
have a real intuition about predators.
Oh boy, yes indeed.
You can just feel them, and you can just know. And I know too and you probably understand this too, Marianna, I know from having lived with a man who was a predator, I absolutely know, I can just feel them. Like I can walk down the street and I can see someone I don't know, and there's just a feeling, an aura, something about them, and I'll just know. I'll just know.
Yes. And you have to honor what you know.
Yes, you've got to really listen to that gut feeling, and just stay away from that person and not interact with them. But yes, you do. And from my perspective, I knew those things at a head level, and I had discussions with my children about inappropriate touching and power over their bodies, etc., etc. But predators are still able to do their dastardly deeds because they're such manipulators and liars, aren't they, Marianna? They just...
Oh, yes. And the sad thing is that I had to learn very early. When my daughter was about 5 years old, I heard some women discussing how cute it was. These are women. So you have to recognize we do damage without realizing ourselves.
Yes.
Here, these women were talking about their nephew, who they were so cute because he had Playboy magazines under his bed, and he and then he was taking little girls and playing doctor with them, and how cute that was. And he was like 5 years old. I panicked. I gave the talk to my daughter before she was ever ready, because I heard about this little boy, and I said, "Don't you ever let anyone touch you." Yes. It's your secret spot. And because I knew that there were people teaching their sons. So you think they're safe in elementary school. But here you have it where they're learning by adults teaching, pushing forward to do this. So it's a sad situation. And this is something we have to teach our children, our boys and our girls, at the same time teaching them that predators exist, but also teaching them not to be angry and bitter and judgmental about people. Because if we can love a lion who's going to eat a deer, see the beauty in that, we have to love each other as human beings the same way. We are not perfect. We are loved, but recognize we have flaws.
So that little boy was 5, so that means that he must have been... Sorry, Marianne. At 5, he must have been subjected to some sort of abuse or seen some sort of behaviour, because at 5 they don't have the capacity to make those things up. It's seen and learned behaviour at 5. So that little boy must have been suffering some sort of abuse as well, don't you think?
Oh, from what I've observed, without having any abuse, sometimes boys have a natural thing within, and that the fathers or the aunties sort of giggle, and then
they think
because I know my little boy was, and my nephew, who had no abuse going on at all, but when they got in the arms of a woman who had well-endowed boobs, they would just take their hand and look, and they twinkle in their eye and look at you like, I remember my friend taking my nephew and going, "Oh, you dirty old man." And he would giggle, 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 giggle. I mean, we don't know that we give them the signs that sort of instinctively know and move towards. And my son, too, in Greece, his grandfather, they were walking down the street, and he saw a magazine that was showing this woman, in a bikini, and he's go, "Good." He makes twinkle, and grandfather and father go, "Ha, ha, ha." So, of course, subliminal is going on. So I don't exactly believe just because they understand things that there's abuse going on. I think there are adults
seen, or the adults are not being clear that this is wrong or this is not okay. Listen, Marianna, we're going to have to go to a quick little break, but when we return, I'd like to talk about your second marriage to your Greek husband. So I'll just throw to you, Rebel, and after the break we'll be back with more Marianna. Welcome back to W4WN. You're listening to Radio Toni with your host, Toni Lontis. We have the wonderful Marianna Quint with us this morning, and before we went on the break, we were talking about her life, and we were up to her marriage to a delightful Greek man. So over to you, Marianna. Let's talk about your Greek husband.
Before I get started, love is all we need. I could not have ever survived this world without love. And those are the choices. Whatever love feels like for you, choose love.
Yes.
That is the only way that I ever made it.
Yeah.
So here, love takes you on a magical journey. So
yeah.
I found my Greek. What do you want to know about him?
So your Thailand husband, did you meet him in the US?
Yes.
And did you? Yep.
Yep. I met him in the U.S. and also met Nico in the U.S. I met him when I was working at UCLA School of Medicine.
Yeah.
And I was having lunch one day, and the universe pushed me over there because if I'd gone the next day, he would not have been there. So this is interesting.
Yes.
So they were talking about Middle Eastern food during lunch, and I said, I've got to try this place. I went over there, and he says, "May I help you, darling?" in a deep voice. And I said, "Oh, what?" I couldn't even read. and I go, to make the order, I go, okay, I have one of those. Anyway, and so while I was waiting for my order, he gave me a little slip of paper, and he says, "Put your number down there, darling." And I go, "Huh?" I go, "I don't give my number out to people." I'm thinking, my head is going on. Oh, I have a roommate. She has 4 kids. Okay, I'm safe. I gave him my number. The moment I give him my number, my inner guidance says, "You're going to marry him."
Oh, wow.
Yep. And so that began the journey.
Oh, wow. So you married in the US, I assume?
Yes. No, I didn't. No, we dated for a while. Then he went back to Greece, and then he called me one day and says, "I got a surprise for you, darling."
Yeah.
Huh? I want you to marry me. What?
Oh.
He had already gone to Greece, and he in his rough, gruff voice, the most romantic way he can think, he asked me to marry him. I thought I was going to die. I did my joy dance. It's my mixture of my Native American and Black. I was all over the floor. Hallelujah, down, up and down. Thank you. So, hands up. That was me. So we got married. I went over to Greece, and I took my little 4-year-old daughter with me.
Yeah.
We went over there. We traveled over to Germany first, and I had never traveled before.
Oh.
And I went over to Germany first, and then from Germany to Greece. And it was, like I said, a magical journey. The door opened.
And so did you end up living in Greece with Nico?
Yeah, I lived there for, I guess I would say, it's about 6-7 months. And then his mother had other plans. He wanted to live there forever. He wanted to settle there, but his mother says, "No, you go back to America."
Okay.
Off I went back to America to being the forerunner, as I am. I went back, and that's where we lived for. We had a 20-year marriage, and and that's what we did.
Oh, that's awesome! And so you went on to have more children with Nico.
2 beautiful boys.
Yes.
Angelos and Yannis Zombies.
And where are the boys now?
They're in California.
They're in California.
Yes.
Okay. So a lovely, nice, long 20-year marriage to Nico. And then what happened?
Well, that was my spiritual school.
Yes.
To Nico, because I had to learn, because I'm a very soft person. He talks. And so I had to really learn about love during this time. Yeah. Because it really was about myself and about him and about life. So that is my spiritual journey actually began. That's when I learned how to be a healer. And that's when I actually got my formula for my lotions. Everything happened in that 20 years.
In that 20 years.
Oh, it was wonderful. Wonderful.
Okay.
However, they told me to love myself, and there were things that weren't, it was a little bitty. It's not, again, that's lack of my spiritual maturity to understand.
Yes.
He was, and what I consider verbally abusive, the way they are.
Yes,
And I was like jumping all the time. So Spirit says, love yourself. And so I started reading this book to love myself. And if you love yourself, you do not stay in a place that is not serving
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So I had to set myself free from that relationship.
Yes.
Him as well, because it was difficult for me, because I'm a little soft bird.
Yes. Yeah, I can identify with that. So, have you maintained friendships with your ex-husbands, or only through the children?
We are so close. And Danny, before he died, we were close as well. It's very, we had a wonderful relationship with Danny, and Nico loved Danny as well. So Danny was mother. So we've always had this, because there's love. I believe in love. Why should we be? And we in positive energy as well. So it's
What a powerful message that I as a divorced and remarried woman, I struggled with trying to stay loving and forgiving with my ex-husband, particularly after he remarried and his new wife was just difficult and instrumental in telling the children things that she had no right to tell them, and I struggled. But I can thankfully say now, after many years of being divorced and many years of being happily remarried, I would like to say that we have the basis of a friendship, but it's mostly in relationship to the kids and making sure that the kids stay in contact with their father and let him know what they're doing. But I love the sound of the relationships that you cultivated, Marianna. That must be a very positive experience for all the children involved. Do you think?
Oh, yeah, I believe so. Oh boy.
Yes.
I'm really, Nico, when Danny died, became Pamela's father, and he said, he was always her father, but stepfather. But then when Danny died, he took up the mantle, and I would say, we have a very wonderful family. Yeah. He goes over to the States for Christmas, and he spends time. He calls them. So why didn't you call me? What's the matter with you? There's a lot of love there.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. So now let's get back to, I want to get you to talk to the listeners about your journey with numerology, and then we'll get on to your lotions and vitamins and herbs. But can you tell the listeners how you got into numerology, what is numerology, and anything else you'd like to tell them about it?
Yes, I learned. During that time, married to Nico, I discovered numerology, and it really set me free. It helped me understand myself and with friends. And I found that knowing your name was even more important than knowing your birthday. Yeah. That's my recent discovery, because your name is your history.
Yes.
And I use numerology. I use astrology and numerology, and I say people depend on them too much. I believe that looking at them, it gives you the foundation of who you are. Says, this is who you're not happy in life. Maybe you didn't make a right choice. So you look at numerology, you look at your birthday, and you look at your name, and you say, oh yeah, that's really me. Wow, how did you know that from numbers? Yeah. Numerology is pretty profound, especially about the name. The name is so powerful. Yeah. The name actually gives you every year of your life. From your name, first name, middle name, and last name. It is your life story. It's amazing. Yes. I've done it for strangers so many times, and they go, how can this be?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I really am in love with numerology as to the secret hidden message in your name.
Okay.
So I use intuition, so I don't just use it. When I look at your numbers, they talk to me.
Okay, okay. So partly intuitive and partly your knowledge of the numbers.
Yes, and also I'm also a healer. So
Yes.
what I seek to do when I'm sitting with people is using the numbers and using the healing energy that they have while we're there. There is also healing there done, because I believe that you do energy work and you get a healing and then you leave. If you go out and you're making the same mistakes, you're going to create the same disease.
Yeah.
So that's why I believe in the power of love. And so when I'm with you, you're sitting in the presence of love, and that creates a space of healing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It sounds like it's powerful stuff for helping people deal with things or discover who they are.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So the numerology is what you discovered in the US. And did you start a practice in numerology? And do you still practice today?
I'm practicing now. I do.
Yep.
I have I do numerology because to me it helps many people.
Yeah,
And I go to parties, meet people on the street and whatever. Because if I want to really help somebody, I do a quick numerology on them.
Yeah.
Because it really helps. It really helps. Especially, I think in every age, but children are trying to think, where am I going? So numerology is the key. Someone who has lived a full life but still not satisfied, numerology helps find, retweak. But you most likely, everything we do is right. We just, in that process on the road, we made the wrong turn here, and we're focusing on the wrong thing. Like if we're on a journey, if you're not paying attention to the journey and you're paying attention to what's going on the right, you might get yourself a little accident over there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're still on the journey, but you just created a challenge.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So before I get onto your journey with herbs and vitamins, I've got some comments here from Linda Glaudet.
Yes.
Would you like me to read those out aloud?
Yeah, I guess so. It's my sister.
Okay, so Linda says, I hope you explain what kind of man your father was, because you painted an ugly picture of mine. Sydney married our mum when she was pregnant with you. You knew he wasn't your father all your life. You did a DNA test in hopes of finding your real dad, and I'm glad you did, because you found 7 new siblings. Our mother had 5 kids with 4, possibly 5 different men.
Yep.
Do you want to say anything about that? We don't have to. We can go on to vitamins and herbs.
I would like to clear up. I did not know Sydney was my father, not my father, until I was about 20 years old when my mom told me.
Okay.
And she told me because I was crying to her, asking her how could he have done that. Now, on the other hand, Sydney did apologize, and we had a wonderful, loving relationship.
Okay.
So I don't believe in judging people forever. People make mistakes.
Yes.
And he did apologize, and I was blessed to be with him when he was sick. He had gotten prostate cancer, and I was with him all the time. We would go visit him, and even my ex loved him and respected him. And so I believe in giving people make mistakes and give people a chance. He didn't do that with anyone else, and he explained to me why that happened with me. And
so what was his explanation, though, Marianna? How could he explain his behavior?
He first asked for my forgiveness when I was 19, and I hung up on him. I said, no way.
Yeah.
And then when I told her in spirit, when literally said, you have to forgive him, I had to find him again. And when I found him again, that's when I found out he had prostate cancer.
Okay.
And I was told to forgive you. You asked me to forgive you a long time ago, and I was told to forgive you. I forgive you.
Yeah.
And he had the most wonderful experience, he and I. And he told me the reason that he had done that, and I guess he must have been drunk or something, because he loved my mom so much. That doesn't make sense to us, but that's what happened. And I guess he saw me, he saw my mom.
Okay.
You know, and I was like very in your face, you know. So, yeah, it was.
So did he have some sort of counseling or therapy that caused him to reflect and apologize to you, or was that something that the wisdom of age brought, or how did that come about?
Well, I think his spiritual wisdom of age, because he had asked me, like I said, when I was 19, and I said no, and so he must have reflected on that for a while
and thought,
and so he then afterwards, you know, I'm sure. But see, again, this is like, I'm speaking this because everyone can learn how forgiveness works.
Yes, it's a powerful message. Linda,
I think it says that that God forgives us, so why aren't we forgiving us?
Yeah.
If we ask for forgiveness, who are we to judge?
Yeah. I have to say my admiration for your forgiveness is quite strong. I still am struggling with forgiveness in my own daughter's life. I still can't forgive the perpetrator of her abuse, and I'm at that stage where I'm not sure that I want to, and listening to you is making me rethink that decision. Linda wants to say she grew up in the same foster home with you, and it was terrible indeed, but thank God we learned strength, endurance, survival skills and compassion from all of that horror. And another one of our listeners, were you in the same experience of your sister? So I'm going to answer that and say the both of you were in the same horrible experience, yes?
It was terrible, and each of us have our own individual horror stories, and she is the most beautiful person inside and out.
Yes.
So, yes, we have, her story is, my pain, and for her is just as, but she's she's survived, and she touches everyone with love everywhere she goes.
So you've both come out the other side healed with this wonderful, loving, forgiving message to tell the world.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. The listeners want to know, did your sister Linda tell her story as well?
I hope so. I'm hoping it's a book. She's a beautiful writer. So
she has written a book, or she is writing a book?
I hope so.
You hope she's writing a book too.
I don't know. I'm trying to push her to do it now.
Okay. I can, from the reason that many of us write about our traumatic stories comes from a place of healing, and it usually comes from a place of happiness. So when you get to that place in your life, it then becomes important to show others who are experiencing any sort of trauma, who are experiencing abuse, or who are in domestic violence situations. You tell your story to give them hope and to show them a way and to light the way for them. And I think it's important that we all keep telling our stories, because it's important to show the way. And one of our listeners is saying, how can you get to that place? So I'm going to leave that over to you, Marianna. How do you get to that place of healing, happiness and love?
Well, first I think the best thing to do is focus love on yourself.
Yes.
as you love yourself and forgive yourself, because we are so hard on ourselves,
We are.
that a lot of the judgments we have for people outside is because we haven't really looked at ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, but for instance, I was abused. So I had a low self-esteem for myself, and a lot of things I had to forgive myself for not loving myself.
Yeah.
So or judging myself that I was bad because it happened to me, or thinking, these are things that when you love yourself and you forgive yourself, you're able to love and forgive others.
Yeah.
And also, you start to think that someone made a mistake. They were young. A lot of us carry stuff about our friends, little kids that once I used to carry somebody's bad because they did that. But there were kids and young teenagers who did things. How many teenagers are judging people? How many adults are judging some teenager for something that's long gone? So when you forgive yourself and you look at even those that you've judged, it becomes easy to love yourself and have love and forgive everyone. But basically, just do the best with yourself, one moment at a time.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, it's about changing the way you talk to yourself and being conscious of the way you talk to yourself and about yourself. So those things include, if you make a mistake, don't say, "I'm so stupid." Say, "Well, that was a silly thing to do, but I'll do better next time." It's about changing the way you think about yourself, the way that you talk about yourself, and the way that you allow yourself the room to make mistakes, and to that to be okay, because nobody's perfect. Some of us have this idea that we need to be perfect and that we live in a perfect world. We don't. The world is not perfect. People and humans are not perfect. But you can allow yourself to be imperfectly perfect. And because there's no other Marianna in the world. There's no other Toni in the world. There's only you can be you. You're not like anyone else. And if you take that point and think from that perspective of, I am unique, I make mistakes and that's okay. And if you start from that point and just moment by moment, you will get to that loving, happy place, won't you, Marianna?
Exactly. And that's where you just said it, moment to moment. You love yourself moment to moment. You love yourself when you fall. You love yourself when you make mistakes. You be your own parent, your own best friend, your own everything, because when you start trusting and loving yourself, because once you start seeing, okay, I fell off the bike, okay, I can get back on and do it again. I hurt my knee, I rub my knee and make myself feel better. We do these things for ourselves, and then you become loving to yourself and everyone else.
Yes. If you start with yourself, then it enables you to love others, forgive others, and be happy for others. But you have to start with yourself, don't you, Marianna?
Exactly. You have to, because the more you love yourself and the more you see those things that you judge, and you yourself want to feel happy, because you'll find when you think of somebody, you get the tight gut and you get tight gritting mouth and all that stuff. When you start to, I don't want to feel that way. I release that. You release it. And then you're able to say, in this moment, I'm choosing to see things in a different light.
And it comes back to that choice, doesn't it? Marianna, we're just going to have to go to another little break. And I promise our listeners, once we get back, I'm going to be talking about Marianna's journey with herbs and vitamins, and also about her lotion. So I'll quickly throw to a break, and we'll join you all, the listeners, back after the break. Okay, over to you, Rebel. Welcome back to W4WN. You're listening to Toni Lontis on Radio Toni, and we're talking with the beautiful Marianna Quint this morning. And before the break, I promised we'd get back to talking about Marianna's journey with herbs and vitamins, and also her lotion. So, Marianna, let's talk about your journey with vitamins and herbs, what you did and how they helped.
Okay, my grandmother was my first teacher. She taught me all about, because she was a midwife in Louisiana. And so she mixed up all her things, and she kept us all healthy. We were very healthy thanks to her.
Right.
So I got to work at City of Hope, and I learned about vitamins and herbs.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Little by little, my whole family has been healed with that until I became healer. Then I used herbs,
yes,
food, and healing energy.
Yeah.
So simpler and simpler and simpler. Now my healing that I use is honey. I'm glad I heard that news you had this morning.
Yes.
Raw honey is one of the best healers I know.
It is, isn't it?
Taking it even by a tablespoon, it just heals your sore throat and everything. And all the herbs, garlic, of course, simple. And it right out of the kitchen. Apple cider vinegar.
Yes. You know, 2 of my favorites.
That's it. That's all you need almost. I heal eye infections with honey, nasal sinuses with honey, sore throats with honey, with nothing else but honey.
Yeah.
I healed my father-in-law he had cataracts with vitamins and honey dipped into his eye every night. His cataract dissolved, and his eyes that were white, almost with a pale, pale blue, and he was almost blind, became pure blue, and he was showing me his handwriting, and his whole disposition changed because of raw honey in his eyes.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing I use, and you might know this too, is lemon. So combination of lemon, apple cider vinegar and honey, all things that are readily, cheaply and easily available, aren't they, Marianna?
Exactly. Right in your kitchen. Actually, one of these days I will give a workshop on celebrating your healing from your kitchen.
Yeah. One of our listeners wants to know if you have a healing book out.
It's coming.
It's coming. I thought you were going to say that. I thought that you were writing a healing book. Yes, yes.
And I actually, the first little book that I'm going to be putting out is called Loving Touch, because remember what I said, that the energy of healing, of love, is more important. And so my journey took me to where I was using lotion to heal my body through touch by anointing my body with the lotion and thinking positive thoughts. Loving yourself is more than just loving yourself. Love the body that you live in. It's so amazing, the healing that you'd get, because we need to be touched. We stop touching our bodies. We stop touching. And we used to get touched by our mothers, and now the older we got, there was less touch, and we're hungry for loving touch.
Yes.
So anybody listening, you want to improve the feeling of yourself, start putting lotion on your body with a loving intention.
Yeah. I think I think that the world is discovering so many things about touch and the healing of touch and the ability to how the energy changes your very DNA and changes your body at a cellular level. And after all, cells are just vibrational bits of energy, aren't they?
Oh, yes, it is. Actually, if you look at it, our body is a mini universe. We're a microcosm of the universe, and every cell has its own consciousness. And being that I work in the lab, I know they look different, they have their own communities, but they work together. And when we start honoring our body and even literally consciously thinking positive thoughts to our body celebrates. My body is growing goosebumps right now. It's a community within ourselves, but we ignore. We think of it as that, okay, we're going to die, it's going to drop. Well, hello. No, it's not that way.
Yeah, yeah. So tell our listeners about your lotions, what they're for, what's in them, and how to use them.
Okay. My lotions were created, actually given to me when I was in Sedona, the formula.
Yes.
This literally came to me through inspiration, and I created and it's very healing. The lotion has aloe, rosa mosqueta, all the things. So much, everything, but everything vitamin A, vitamin E, everything your body needs for just topical healing. However, with the lotion, I also put healing energy, because I told you I'm a healer, and I put healing energy into that lotion. And I've heard wonderful stories: burns being healed, sunburn. Burns being healed. I got testimonials up the wazoo, as I say in America, about what good this lotion does. But if you're not aware of it or know of the healing energy, just putting it on with love, you are putting within your body, it accentuates that energy that you have.
So it's as simple as that, is it?
It is simple as that. It's a strong formula, but using love to put anything on, any lotion will do. But I have to say mine, when you put it on, you see it work. I'm so happy, and it was given to me by Spirit. When I get happy about it, because when I see someone using it and I can see the results of their skin, like the next day, I had a friend whose husband used cement, and he used to use the lotion because it was make his hands soft, and they were over the lotion because she would see the lotion on the table meant tonight's the night, because she didn't like his body. His hand touching her body was sandpaper. When he started using lotion, his hands got softer. So so I have those type of wonderful experiences with people who use it. Then they fall for it.
That's pretty cool.
Yes.
So how can people get your amazing lotions?
Well, at the moment, I recently started getting orders for the lotion. I'm making it. So what they do, if they're interested in a lotion, contact me through my website. I will
put up all Marianna's contact details in the chat box at the end of our interview. So listeners, don't worry, I'll put up Marianna's contact details in the chat box. Go on, Marianna, sorry.
And you can write me that you're interested, and I will then let you know how to, right now it's in the moment. Actually, I'm lucky enough that I had to face a wonderful challenge that I was asked to make my lotions. I gave a bottle to a friend, and she liked it. And so she gave it to another friend, and they want me to be at a table tonight selling it at the Bronco League. Tonight.
For our listeners in the US, the Broncos are our Queensland state football team, very popular here in Queensland, and their Broncos is the club, and it's very popular and very big, isn't it, Marianna?
Yes, it is. And can I tell where this is going to be? I'm going to be at the table.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's going to be at 98 Fulcher Road, Red Hill, Queensland,
Australia. For all our Australian listeners, that's at 98 Fulcher Road, is it?
Yeah, Fulcher Road, yes. Fulcher Road, Red Hill.
Someone's going, the Denver Broncos? No, sorry, not the Denver Broncos. The Broncos are from Queensland, Australia. They're in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, the capital of the state of Queensland in Australia. So that's where Marianna will be selling her wonderful lotions tonight. And you've got some workshops and events coming up, Marianna.
Yes.
Can you tell our listeners about those?
Yes, I'm going to be teaching or sharing Celebrating Life, and that's what I've learned about how to turn the negative into the positive, and how to move yourself up from depression, and using these tools. It's a happy workshop because I'm going to be singing and we're going to be dancing, and we're going to learn how music really, and for everyone who can't make the workshop, one of the clues is, even if no matter how depressed you are, with the intention to change that, put the music on. Because I've been there, so I'm not talking about something I don't know about. Put the music on, and while you're working, and then you'll hear something that moves you. Yes. And when it moves you, move. Yes. Make your life a musical. You know, in those movies, people, the Bollywood movies, they'll be cleaning house. Put the music on and start dancing. Dance with the broom. Dance with the dishes. Your spirit will uplift. And when you are uplifted, it's something that just fills you with light. It raises your vibrations, and you become a lighter person. Use the music. Use your voice to move yourself. Make the intention. Sometimes you're so dark you can't even feel like you could pull yourself out of the hole. But pull yourself out. You can.
Yes,
so
you can.
My first event is July 7th at 192 Talk. This is terrible writing. It's Talk. I can't even read it. Like me. I can tell you where I'll be because the writing, I wrote it so fast I can't even read it.
That's all right. When I put your contact details up, people will be able to ask where your workshop is and what events are coming up. So that workshop's on the 7th of July.
Yes.
In Brisbane.
It's not in Brisbane. It's near the Gold Coast.
Okay. Righto. So not Brisbane, it's near the Gold Coast. Do you do any workshops and events in the US anymore, Marianna?
Yes, I do. I actually had one that was canceled in New Mexico.
Oh, okay.
Did one about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So, but I'm working my way back home to do some more work.
Yes. Excellent. Well, my wonderful Marianna, we are out of time for our segment this morning. I just want to take the time to thank you so much for sharing with me and our wonderful listeners a very personable story of triumph over trauma. And as promised, I will pop all Marianna's details into the chat box, but we have to pop on to a little break. And so I'll say goodbye to Marianna now, and thank you ever so much for being on Radio Toni, and I will be talking to you again in the future, no doubt. So over to you, Rebel, and I'll be back after the break, listeners. Hello, everyone. It's Toni Lontis back with you on Radio Toni. Before I get into telling you about next week's wonderful guest, I just wanted to finish this week's radio station with a positive news story. So from Good News Network, there's a Rainbow Railroad helping people of the LGBT community. Though many Western countries have come to embrace equal rights and protections for our LGBTQ citizens, other world governments have not been so progressive. But that's where the Rainbow Railroad comes in. Similarly to how the Underground Railroad helped African American slaves escape to freedom, the Rainbow Railroad is a non-profit that has been helping hundreds of LGBTQ people from around the world escape their oppressive governments. Over the course of the last 5 years, the organisation has facilitated the evacuation, transportation and resettlement of almost 550 people. In 2018 alone, the group helped rescue 198 people. In countries all over the world, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer and intersexual people live in a basic fear for their freedom, their safety and their lives. They often have nowhere to turn because their government and police not only tolerate but encourage this brutality. The Rainbow Railroad exists to help these people get out of danger and have somewhere safe to go. In the spirit of the Underground Railroad. The mission of the Rainbow Railroad is to help LGBTQI people seek safe haven from state-enabled violence or prosecuting. So next week, we're going to be talking to another author by the name of Natalia Rozvekian. Now, Natalie grew up in the Arab world, and she is the great-granddaughter of Armenian genocide survivors, and she was born and raised in Lebanon. 8 years ago, she remarried and settled down in Montreal with a loving Canadian husband, and she spent the last year gathering data and recollections to undertake the writing of her first novel. Her experience includes nearly 2 decades of journalism and television as an actress and a live TV show host. She's also been a radio host in the Lebanese and Arabic societies. Eventually, Natalie rose through the ranks, living the unspeakable until she gave it all up for a choice at happiness and true love. In her story Masks, her protagonist, Anna, reveals the taboos and stories that unfold behind closed doors and the hidden traps found within the glamorous circles of fame and fortune. Natalie experienced the downfalls of the show business industry, and through her book Masks, exposes its uncensored reality. Today, besides being a housewife, reading and watching movies, Natalie is in the process of writing her second novel. Me Too stories of sexual assault have dominated our headlines in the Western world, but across the water, in the Arabic world, the issue remains an elusive one, with many untold stories of hardship, pain, and trauma. Natalie wrote this story because she wanted to face her own demons. And by facing her own demons, she came out a victor rather than a victim. She wanted to be the hero in her own story. And she dreamed of fame and power in her native home of Lebanon, but she gave up all of those things to live a life of love and peace. Her book Masks is a dark fictional tale based on the author's true life events. Anna, in the book, is an Armenian girl born in Lebanon in the late 70s. She achieves fame and fortune as a prominent television host in the Middle East, but at an incredible cost. Natalie says that Anna's story is not unique, but in the Middle East, it's one that is rarely told. So next week, we'll be talking to Natalie, who now lives in Montreal with her husband, and we'll be talking about her own sexual harassment whilst living in Lebanon. And just finally, one of our listeners wants to know, when do we become the writer of our own story? I think you can become the writer of your own story as soon as you decide that. All it takes to become the writer of your own story is to start making positive choices. And if you actually want to write, sit down and write. Write on scraps of paper, write in a journal, write in a notebook. But the important thing is to start writing. And I know for myself, I just made a decision to write my book, and I just sat down and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. And after I'd finished writing as much as I could write, then I started editing and putting it in some form of structure and telling the story the way that I wanted it to be told. So that's about it for me this week. I'm going to throw to Rebel in a moment, who has a final song for you, and I look forward to talking to you all next week. I've placed Marianna's contact details in the chat box on the W4WN chat room, and I look forward to hearing from you all this next week. Thank you so much for your interaction this week. I love hearing from you. I love the way you interact with my guests and ask questions, and I look forward to joining you all next week. Over to you, Rebel. Bye, everyone.